Hello and welcome to the latest episode of Cohesity Spotlight on Security Tech Insights. My name is Shelley Calhoun-Jones and I'm a Technical Marketing Director here at Cohesity. Today we're joined by Ash Hunt from Sierra and Raj Kulkarni from AWS. Ash, would you like to give an introduction?
Yes, thanks, Shelley. Hi, everyone. As mentioned, I'm from Sierra, so I'm the VP of Strategy there and get to look after all of the things that revolve around our corporate strategy, our product strategy, and our product innovation long term. Prior to that, I've spent my entire career in information security, and my last couple of roles as a former FTSE 250 and global CISO within financial services.
Ash, it's great having you here. I'm really looking forward to having this conversation with you today. Before we get started, though, Raj, would you like to also give an introduction?
Absolutely. Yeah, thanks for inviting me. Myself, Raj Kulkarni. I am Partner Solutions Architect with AWS. I have been working with AWS for last 3 years plus, and with information security domain for more than 20 years. I have a lot of financial background, banks, and experience with PayPal and other institutes like data security architect, cloud security architect, and I'm more than happy to help my partners and do engagements like this.
Well, it's great having both of you guys, and I'm real excited to see that you've both been working in the industry for a while. It sounds like we all kind of come from the realm of security, so I'm real excited to work with you guys today and talk with you about this very important topic. Because with cloud adoption, it's really transformed the way that organizations manage security. And while a lot of discussions, emphasize infrastructure and compliance, the primary challenge is protecting the data itself rather than just the workloads. So the idea with data security posture management is that it works alongside data protection and recovery to help close those gaps to enhance the effectiveness of your security. So this is going to be a really great conversation, and I'm looking forward to working with both of you guys today. Just for the audience, we're going to be kind of rotating back and forth. So I'm going to go ahead and start with Raj here, since you're coming from the cloud space. What are some of the current challenges or trends that make data security, challenging today, for a lot of organizations? What are some of your thoughts?
Yeah, thanks for that question, Shelly. So we as an AWS have millions of partners and customers that we work with every day. And one of the biggest challenges that we are seeing is the data transformation and the data cloud transformation. So we have a lot of different entities and data that are coming into your storage platform, which are having a lot of sensitive data. And that sensitive data, when that comes into your storage platform, it also needs a lot of visibility. So that is a biggest challenge. Like, where is your data? How do you monitor them? Where is the visibility across the board? So those are the biggest challenges we are seeing across the customers, and that's where we work with partners like you to help figure out what is the correct data strategy for your posture management, figuring out what your vulnerabilities, where are the blind spots, right? So we definitely work on that with our partners.
Yeah, it's a really good point that you bring up there, Raj. I know for a lot of organizations, they could be in the middle of their multi-year cloud migration journey. They could have just acquired another company and merged together, or maybe you just have a lot of different workloads that live in different parts of your organization. So I think that's really interesting that you mentioned that, Raj. And, kind of turning over to Ash, I'm just curious, from a resilience perspective, how do you think this really applies when we have fragmented data like this, where we're focusing on resilience versus prevention? How would you define this for measuring security maturity?
So I think it's been a well-used trope within security that it's a when, not if issue for most of the events that we face. And so I think our mindset has naturally shifted over time into one of resilience rather than just pure play prevention. Certainly as the complexity of attacks has evolved rapidly over time, that's obviously doubling down with the rapid speed of AI deployment. We're facing increasing challenges, although I can say from my experience, particularly having ran large-scale global security teams, that in most organizations, a lot of the core resilience that we really need to be building in is often generated by accidental-led events. And what I mean by those, to some of the points Raj mentioned, is actually knowing where data lives, knowing what kind of data is actually underpinning your core mission critical processes, right? The MCPs that we would typically call in banking. And I think you would be surprised that most organizations don't have a good grip of this. It's because organizations, particularly large enterprises, are complex. And so when it comes down to the kind of showstopper events, the ransomwares of the world or the big outages, it can be really challenging to know exactly where to pinpoint your recovery point objectives and to do so with within a very quick window. And the answer to all of that really is going to lie within your data. And I think it's actually an area that's often been overlooked. Typically, we think about from a resiliency architecture perspective, rebuilding the systems and the applications and the kind of front end services. But actually, especially in financial services, if you can't recover back up to a specific point in time, you're not going to be able to continue to transact. And so that data integrity piece also falls into that challenge when it comes to resiliency. And I think the overarching objective, and you can see this even in the regulatory requirements nowadays with things like the EU DORA Act, that global regulators, nation states, federal authorities are now requiring large enterprises to move to a model where you can retain 80% of your revenue generating processes, even in some of the worst circumstances, and kind of jettison the stuff in the business that doesn't matter. And I think that's going to really re-architect the way that we think about our security controls and definitely our relationship with data.
That's brilliant. I love the fact that you also mentioned the compliance piece, because I think that's a challenge for a lot of organizations, especially right now, with how quickly the threat landscape is changing. Making sure that you know exactly the right recovery point objective to recover.
Right.
Also having that window of when you know that the threat was active within the environment. There may be a situation where you may need to recover that infected snapshot into a clean room and do additional investigation. So, but having that timeline and really, really understanding the type of data that you have is quite essential. So
sure.
That's a great answer. Let's kind of change it up a bit. Let's think about those blind spots that we talked about earlier, because for a lot of organizations, we're dealing with fragmented data, we're managing different environments. What are some of the biggest blind spots that a lot of organizations run into, Raj, with keeping their data secure, especially if you're working in like a multi-cloud environment? Maybe we have maybe we're working in an organization where we're not just working in AWS, but we could be working in another cloud provider.
Yeah, I think that's a very interesting question, because when we talk about the blind spot, that are the usual things that we kind of get ignore, or that's something that we could not see, right? So one of the issues that I see is lack of unified visibility, right? As you mentioned, that a multi-cloud environment, you really don't know what is the data stored across the board. And I have seen, being in different, as an experience in my industry, is we have a lot of data sitting around which we don't know. We don't have a right labeling of it. We don't know the data classification of it, and that's kind of one of the problem, because you don't have single visibility across the cloud platform. Another issue that I see is inconsistent security controls across the cloud platforms. You have one rules that you have managed rules for particular environment in AWS, and it could be a different security policy for a different cloud provider. There are also other, like Ash was mentioning about the data sovereignty and the compliance issues, which are across the board in different regions, can be applied in different regions, right? So these are like very high, you could see problems that you could see the blind spots when we are working with them. Then there are also other like access issues, and we can go into the granularities, like, hey, why some people have more accesses than less? Some people have like shadow IT, if you know that word, and there is access problems like unauthorized data accesses. So these are all combined, when you are looking at it, is helping to understand where we are going with fixing those issues, right? So how we find those issues today is working with our different AWS platforms that we have, like AWS config, which helps in managing inventory and other data issues that we are doing. We have also system managers which keep the data off the track. Then there is AWS backups and other stuff as well. So there are a lot of different services we provide, but we also actively work with partners like you, which are close to the customers, and help them evolve into that space. But yeah, that's a very interesting point.
Oh, that's great. Whenever I think of shadow IT, I always think of back when we were all working from home during COVID, and you had all these different devices that were connecting into your corporate environment.
That was the time when all the accesses could be given, and people could have their, even today we see like bring your own devices. I think that's the better way to do it.
Yeah.
And just going into some of the Gen AI impact that we are seeing, like everybody is going into Chat GPT and other versions of AI that are available, and that's where another set of problems are coming in. Like people are
Yeah.
able to access sensitive data and across the board. So yeah.
Yeah, it's just another attack vector. Well, let's change it up a bit. Let's imagine that we are dealing with an active security event. From an incident response perspective, how would optimizing your data security posture change the way that your incident response team would operate? And I'm going to go ahead and give this one to Ash. What's some of your perspective on this?
So I've been through lots of live material breaches in my career, and I think the industry writ large is kind of experiencing a bit of a ground rush in the way that we're treating data now. We've sort of known it's never been easy to deal with for a very long time, and I think now the urgency with the both frequency and the complexity of the types of incidents that we're facing, we're seeing a completely renewed rush to deal with this problem. And the reason being is that it's essentially the sort of lifeline that you need when it comes to effective incident management. You can't do anything without data. And we're seeing an evolving maturity as we get better with our relationship with data, from a kind of decision by gut to decision by data. And I can say from, again, personal experience that the stuff that really harms you when you're going through an incident is the integrity of the and accuracy of the data that you're dealing with, and the delta within which you can first discover it and identify it and then actually use it for whatever. It could be providing comms messaging in crisis management. It could be ensuring that you're going to patch the right kind of things after you've done forensics with your SOC. And it's interesting, my background previous to being a CISO was in quantitative modeling and decision engineering. And one of the exercises I used to do with my teams was, once we had an incident, I would work with my head of SOC and we would go back through with his team to measure the amount of manual effort it took to actually identify data from the point of discovery right through to it being utilized as part of the incident management process. And when you're doing that manually, we were hemorrhaging hundreds of thousands of dollars in loss in operational expenditure. And we started to look at different ways we could leverage technology to discover data quicker, to intelligently understand it, and to then use that into automated means, so that when we did incur another incident, that we could respond much faster, and our response losses and recovery losses would ultimately drop. And I think one of the really interesting innovations that you're seeing at the moment, particularly in the SecOps arena, is not only the sort of enablement of automation now, which is all hinging on data intelligence, but it's moving to autonomous action. And the application of agentic orchestration into SecOps is going to take the example I just gave and make it 100 times even more effective. As long as we're able to kind of codify the agents to operate in the right manner, which is going to hinge on the fidelity of the data, and the way that we architect our processes, we're going to start to see a completely new competitive edge for the defender, I think, when it comes to incidents, versus where that kind of edge has typically always been with the adversary.
That's brilliant. It gives you another way to go out into your environment and gather intelligence about an ongoing issue. So I could definitely see that being exceptionally helpful, especially with incident response teams. A lot of times you're wearing multiple hats. You could have other duties that you're also doing while you're dealing with the security event. So having that extra help definitely does help a lot. All right. Well, let's go ahead and pivot back over to DSPM. I'm curious, Ash, how would DSPM insights help organizations if they're dealing with a security event, or just to bolster their data protection strategy overall?
So like I mentioned earlier, we've had this program for, I don't know, at least over a decade. And I remember the early years of my career where we were using self-classifiers and very binary forms of classification, which ultimately if they were in the end user's hands, were almost always inaccurate. So I can remember people choosing to classify documents so that they could circumvent DLP controls. And obviously, the binary labels didn't really give us any intelligence. And the big shift that DSPMs ushered in, certainly those leveraging large language modeling, machine learning, and neural networks, is the ability not to just build single classifiers, but almost the heuristics around a single piece of data. And what I mean by that is its compliance status, its residency, its control status on things like encryption and MFA, all of the access and identity graph sat around that data. You start to build this contextualized picture unique to your organization and to the data in its current state. And that is ultimately going to give you all the intelligence you need to drive that data through any organizational program that you choose to, which I think is one of the really interesting points around DSPM. It's one of the first very effective bridges between security and enterprise technology, where we've been able to actually drive a data-centric approach to technology operations and security in lockstep, which is why often we're seeing a lot more closer collaboration now between the general counsel, those kind of programs of like data subject access requests, e-discovery requests, etc., the CDO office, data literacy, data governance, data management, data analytics, and then security, typically all of our data discovery, classification, and most importantly, our DLP control. So you can see that it's acting as this unifier. I think the last point I'd make on this as well, as to why it's so crucial, is previously we adopted in my view, completely wrong approach in that we tried to act very quickly to discover data. And because we weren't able to very effectively understand that data, we would have to build regexes, which were often completely unsuited to the scale and complexity of the task of our data estates, which meant it was very burdensome. And we never really got a clear or even accurate understanding of our data at all. And what we really want to move to, and what we have moved to now with DSPM, is a kind of less haste, more speed strategy, where we're not hastily just trying to just get across our environments. What we're doing is really raiding our environments with very advanced LLM and AI-led technology to actually build an advanced understanding that can propel us forward very, very quickly. So instead of those data security programs becoming a drag on the business, they're now going to give that thrust to all of those data security programs and data initiatives across the business. And I think that's really going to build out a data-centric approach for the future organizations, which is also going to be critical to underpinning NEI-led initiatives as well as we move forward.
That's great. It definitely makes sense. A lot of times doing a data discovery process, it could take days, if not weeks, depending on the size of your organization. So having a more heuristic approach definitely makes a lot of sense. It's great. Raj, how would you, or do you have any thoughts on this? And also, how would you move the conversation from cybersecurity to being compliance versus, just being more resilience driven instead?
Yeah, I think that was a very good points that Ash made, right? And I think just to continue what we are looking at from our perspective is to like how do we identify the critical data, right? That's one of the questions that Ash has answered, and that's one of the critical questions that we are also always looking forward for. And when we are looking into moving from compliance to resilience, right, one of the things that comes to our mind is how do you make the continuous improvement on your security policies that are basically today we are doing in the periodic basis, right? So compliance means, hey, are you going to check this or validate this on a particular day, on a particular event? But that is not how we are looking our shift as it goes from models, LLM models, to all being AI and monitored and actively being generated alerts. I think we are looking for very continuous monitoring processes. Another thing that AWS looks forward is also on the proactiveness of how much we are able to stop those security incidents by doing some security measures using like WAF or using AWS Shield or any other AWS services. What approach we are trying to do here is to make sure that, hey, we are making some proactive alerts which are going to help you in incident response as well. The one of the other points that we look forward to is to work on regular testing and making those simulation of those exercises. I think those are very important when you are moving towards your resilience. Like one of the security pillar for us is resilience, making sure your backups are in the right way. There are other security guardrails are in place. Like one of the services that we provide is AWS Control Tower, which helps in making baselining your security guardrails or security benchmarks that you are going to do on an account, using like AWS organizations for your multi-account strategy. So different services, but I think the theme here is to understand how robust and are our incident response recovery platforms. So we want to make sure that everything that we are doing is helping in our resilience as well, right? So one is the critical identification of data, the other is continuously monitoring of that data, so visibility of data, then making sure that the security measures are in place and the benchmark standards are in place. And then we are going back towards where you are saying, hey, this is how we are going to build our backups. And that's where we have like other competency partners that we work with, like Cohesity, which helps in DSPM and other backups and other stuff that you need. But that's where I think we are looking to leverage AWS services.
Yeah, and I think the other point is that really the idea is that we're working together as a community. We're sharing information, intelligence, we're building solutions that work together.
Yep.
And that's what I love about our partnership, both with AWS and Cyera. You give us the ability to extend our platform into the cloud, and we also have the ability to work with security partners like Cyera to send that information over to help feed into your bigger security program and solution. So it's great having those type of partnerships, and it's really great getting both of your perspectives. Raj, do you have any thoughts before we wrap up today's episode?
Yeah, I think what I would say is, as a last thoughts, departing thoughts, is making sure that we are understanding the challenges we are going through, making sure that we are aligning our security strategy accordingly with that, making sure our compliance governance processes and the best practices that we are using from different services that we are providing, and just having a robust strategy across the board on your how your backups are done, or every other detection, response, and recover incidents as done. So I would say that focus on best practices and baseline on them. Yeah.
Ash, do you have any final thoughts?
Yeah, I think when I look at the evolution of the modern enterprise, I can see a very clear, direct, causal relationship between the evolution of data and identity, and ultimately how that's going to be used by AI. And I think AI is going to be valued by its limit as much as it is by its extent. And I think that's going to define the type of architectures that we're needing to secure as we go forward in the future. And to your point, Shelley, and Raj made this as well, and I can definitely say this as well, having bought lots of security products in my career as a CISO, we want consolidation, we want orchestration, and we want those stacks glued together, all operating towards common control objectives. I think these partnerships are incredibly valuable and important, not only to develop the right kind of innovative tech, but actually to really drive the outcomes that customers ultimately are going to lean on. And I think one of the real good examples of that, and Raj touched on this, is we're seeing this evolution into adaptive governance and what I would call reflexive controls that can adapt to our changing environment. This is one of the really brilliant innovations with applying AI to the data intelligence challenge that we've done with DSPM, that we're able to start understanding in real time the changing state of our data and how it's being used through its entire lineage. And I think that as an example of the kind of adaptive governance and those reflexive controls that can update and respond to things in real time is going to be what's required to move at the speed and at the scale that our future environments are going to demand. And so I think these kind of partnerships are incredibly valuable, important, and it's been great sharing those thoughts with you guys today.
No, likewise, it's been great. It's been great working with both of you today, and I love just learning about some of the new innovations that are happening, both at Sire and AWS, and also just learning more about your perspectives of what's happening right now out in the industry. So it's great having you. Just to the audience, I highly recommend that you go out to Sire.com, also go out to AWS. Cohesity does have an integration with Sire, and you can actually find this DSPM integration out on the Cohesity marketplace. We have videos and resources that will help get you started. This wraps up another episode of Cohesity Tech Insights. Thanks for watching, everyone.